Well, welcome everyone. My name is Gary Jones. I am the lead investigator for what we call the Pentyrch UFO Incident. We are in the 4th anniversary of this major UFO event, and I'm very happy to be back here at the Lewis Arms because we were here last year to do a 3rd year anniversary event. In that particular exercise, that presentation night, we demonstrated that the military, the media, and other government institutions were covering up what happened here 4 years ago. They couldn't answer direct questions, and when we caught them out in their lies, they would change their stories to fit the things that we were telling them. Now, I'm just going to give you a brief update for those of you who are not familiar with this. 26th of February 2016, a 3-day build-up to that day, there were 2 planes circling in the fields of Pentyrch, where the abandoned quarry is, just behind that neighbourhood of Mysasan. And what was going on, Kaz Clark here, say hello Kaz.
Hello.
Kaz Clark is one of the primary witnesses who saw the event and has been the only one who's come forward and told the world what she saw, along with myself and the evidence we've gathered. So what went on that night? Let's just build it up to that day. After the 3 days and nights of 2 planes circling in turn, Kaz and her neighbour Dave, who's the other primary witness, who unfortunately does not want to come forward right now, they were doing a sky watch just in their homes behind the fields, and as the planes were circling, and there were 5 or 6 of them at least, many of them large aircraft carriers, E-3 Sentry planes, and just right there in the fields, not too far from the quarry, this red object appeared. And eventually it turned into a series of lights, which eventually became this large, triangular, pyramid-shaped craft, which was enormous, many hundreds of feet high and many hundreds of feet wide. The more amazing thing is that the military, judging by their actions, were prepared for its arrival and were taking actions to deal with it. Now, as they observed this craft, what they observed, was smaller craft coming from within inside the body of the main one itself, these orbs or barrels as we call them, some green, some red. There was one that shot out earlier just before it and hovered above like some kind of recon, very bright and very green. A lot of things happened during that time. This one green object took off in a direction of Lantrisson, where the Royal Glamorgan Hospital is, and we do actually believe that that thing actually was shot down as a crash team was sent to Smilog Woods. The military shut down that place for a number of hours. There was a search conducted on the Lantrisson Common where all the scrap metal was collected, and the whole area was cleared. And then in the days and weeks that followed, Kaz and her friends had done their own investigations, and sometime later me and a few others, until eventually myself, took this on, and we've gathered so much evidence, and we have concluded that the so-called military exercise was an actual real-life event. This wasn't some exercise that was taking place. They were here for something that came from somewhere else. And if you've seen our earlier presentations, I have them uploaded, and I'll give you the links for them later on. What we discovered is that there is just so much evidence to this case, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to present a little more to you, just to show you where we're at and why this is so important. So, just going to go over some of the Pentyrch field EMF and radiation updates. If any of you have done any sort of history studies into UFO cases, where these objects have been seen on the ground, or in the fields, or in the countryside, where people have gone into the area where this thing was, scanned it with EMF or radiation detectors, there's always a higher source of that energy in the area where this thing's been seen than the surrounding areas around it. And over the years, we've scanned these fields. I've kept a constant eye on the energy signatures, and they have actually diminished. But let me just show you what we found in October throughout December of 2017. This is just a recap for some of you. This is the first field here. The gate, there's a gate entrance to this field. Now this is where we found all these signals, right? And we took an EMF detector with us, and what we are seeing here is the magnetic field strength. And these are all the results that we actually got. This red light goes off when there's more than normal or should I say, the safety levels exceed what the device is calibrated for. And what's amazing about this was that we have a few clusters here, but this trail here, right, represents a path that Kaz and Dave said that this object took when it actually moved from the second field into the third field. Eventually it reached this point here. Now this is Tinnacoy Road that runs along the back of this. And this is an area we used to call the ball patch. We still call it that for identification purposes. The reason why it was bald is, or why we call it ball patch, is that it was a very distinct patch of grass that had been stripped of or just lost a lot of what was actually there. Some of the snake grass or the weeds or the bushes, things looked burnt. The grass looked like it had been stripped of the chlorophyll that gives it that green shine. This is one of the areas where the strongest signals were being found, as well as this tree line here. Now, you can go on the presentation videos and see why that's significant, but you know, that is outdoors, and there's no other energy source to be given off there, so why is that there? Because it's artificial. Right, Geiger counter detections. Now, this is the 19th of December 2017. Now, this is Emlyn Williams on the video of Swansea UFO Network. He brought a radiation detector with him because once we were doing the EMF detections, we thought we got to see if we can pick up more gamma, beta, radiation, stuff like that. Now, I'm just going to play this video, and I hope it will work for me. I just want to show you some of the things that we were doing.
5. I put it there, right? Wait for it to go still, and a second or two later, then shot up to 10.
That's still on the
We'll
track.
do it again now.
Still on track for there.
Come on, you silly thing.
It's gone down again. Hang on. Who are that?
Yeah,
7.
right.
Oh, nearly touched 10 then. 7.
Now these are the results that we actually got. This is what we wrote down. You can see that this is the path of the actual EMF trail that we had. This line here represents the boundary between the second and the third field, and the circle is the actual ball patch. Now, some of the numbers are highest where the lines are and where the ball patch is. Don't matter if you don't understand it now. I will explain this, why this is a significant find. I felt that, you know, we needed something a little more up to date, so I went and bought one of these GMC 320 plus radiation detectors, and those are the things that it scans for. And I went into these areas, you know, I went around here and had a look, but I went into these areas again because this is what the tree line looks like here. There's a lot of stones under there, and that's going to be significant later. And I went around all the other areas where we knew we had hot spots, but these two photos on the left, you can see, I don't know if you can see it there, but the numbers say a lot higher than this one here, look, they almost double. They're not very high readings, but they're still unusual for this area, because if the radiation is natural, it should look like this, but yet we're getting a double strength for it anyway. So I decided I wanted someone to help me interpret what these readings are. Now, I've got a few friends who know about this stuff, and this is what they say to me. Okay, in the higher readings, 1 hour's exposure is equal to roughly 21 days of normal background radiation. So in 1 hour, standing in this area, you're getting a 21-day normal dose. It's not much, but it is enough to give you a sort of taste of why this thing is very unusual. Now, looking at one of the more higher readings on the bottom there, he says, the count looks relatively low, minus 100. 100 is considered the danger threshold. The higher reading, 29 counts per minute, or 0.9 microsieverts per hour, as you can see the readings there. They say that 1 hour's exposure at that point is roughly equal to a chest x-ray. This means it's around 60 times background radiation. So chest x-ray is equivalent to 2.4 days background, or roughly 60 hours. Now, it may not sound like much, but the question is, this was done at least nearly 3.5 years after the event has already taken place. Before that, the results were a lot higher, and then when we did the EMF, they were even higher than that. What it's showing is that somehow There is an artificial energy source that can be read on these devices, but over time it is actually diminished. And I've made the point in presentations previously that when these craft have been seen, they always seem to leave these unusually higher than normal background radiation levels, and if you spend some time monitoring them, they always diminish. It's a good sign, a good piece of evidence that there is UFO activity taking place. Now, some people have said that, well, it's probably something in the geological ground, something that's already there, that's natural. Well, I thought, okay, well, I'll take a look. This is a map of the British Geological Survey, and it's the Geology of the Britain viewer. These are all the keys and things that you can look for. And as you can see, we have Pentyrch where the arrow is, but there, look. Right, I'll just show you the next map. That is actually the deposits, or what is actually in the ground. And you can just see here, there is nothing unusual about it. It's all just mudstone and limestone and sedimentary rock. It's found all throughout Pentyrch, Cardiff, Wales, but yet in this isolated area, or should I say these last two fields here, we're getting these unusual readings. Nowhere else. We scan all the fields around, we get nothing. We go into the area where this craft was seen, and we're getting all these unusual readings, and that trail, that EMF trail. And I'm just going to play another video for you, because I want you to see something I did with some of the photographs I found. Signs of EMF damage. Now, this is actually one of the bushes. I've done this previously, but this is something I didn't cover in so much detail. When the craft actually had disappeared, the main lights of the craft had gone, the smaller orbs, the red and green ones, were still visible. And Kaz and Dave were standing by the gate, watching over, and they could see some of them were approaching them. One stopped in line with the bush, about 15 feet just above it, and there's this tree which is right next to the gate, and it actually shone a green light on them. That is become very evident. But I want to show you this video because this is the bush that had the red one that was sort of like watching while the green one stood and observed. And Kaz and I have talked about this, and this is something that we have noticed. Right. But as you get into the area where the signals were coming from, and this is where this red barrel-shaped orb would have been, this is the spot that Kaz and Dave identified to us, and where we found our signal, many signals, number of times we scanned the area. You can see as you get into this area, look, it starts to go more yellow and brown. I think some of the leaves are even looking a little unhealthy there. This is around November 2017. And this is early 2019. This is the same bush by the same field, and okay, they're starting to show something now, but look at the leaves again that grow next to it. Still brown, still orange. I mean, this is being affected by something, it looks like. You can see, it's all green over there, but as it gets into this area, it starts to show some kind of something that's affecting it. And just to show you the opposite side of the bush, again, look, this is the closest to this bush here, look, right? And these leaves here are brown, somewhat a bit dead, I would say, But as you go back to the other side, look, okay, they're a bit yellow, but there's more green on them, and they seem to get more healthy as they go down towards there, look, as you can see here. So I'm just wondering, is this evidence of EMF damage to the local plant life? Since then, I've been back to look at those bushes, and that entire area now grows normally. For 2.5 years, or for nearly close to 3 years, this one area where Kaz and Dave saw that one barrel, and where I scanned it with the EMF, and I took all kinds of other devices like metal detectors to make sure there's no wires running under there for false readings or anything. 2.5, close to 3 years, it didn't do anything. But if you go there now, it just grows normally. The bulb patch grows normally again, and a lot of the grass has started to rejuvenate. The area has just returned pretty much back to normal. Right. Witness update. It's been a hard road trying to get people to speak about this event. Kaz has come out straight away. We have wondered if Dave would actually like to come out and speak himself. Maybe in the future, but for now he's just not willing to do so. He has spoken to people personally, and many people who listen to him do believe him as much as they listen to Kaz. He is just such an honest person. Now, this is a story that was put out by the radio station The Wave in Swansea. And if you look under the word The Wave there, the date is actually there, 26th of February 2016. This is the following morning and into the night. The story was that helicopters reported around Wales from 4 a.m. And I'll be explaining more about that later, but there was a massive presence of the military all across South Wales. They were supposed to stay in the Llantrys and Cardiff areas, but for some reason they then moved it all the way over to Swansea a few hours after the incident had happened in the fields around Pentyrch. Now, this is some of the discussions. I've kept their names a secret because I feel, they've got to have some privacy. Some people say, yeah, it was 2 military Chinooks. I saw them. This person here, yes, they were following a cluster of lights in the sky. There was also a few jets there as well. And of course, this person here came over to my house about 10 times last night, loud as you fill in the blank. But the thing is, no one knew why they were there, what their purpose was, but this one person here really got my interest because he's talking about a cluster of lights. Now I know that when the actual craft itself from the witness statements, that seemed to have gone back the way it came, but the other orbs, the things that let off, 15 to 20 of them, stayed around here. And the military, according to TC, the jets were followed, there were jets there as well, 2 Chinooks, I saw them, gave chase to them. How do I know this? We got in contact, me and Kaz, with this person. I tried to get him to talk straight away, but he wouldn't really open up to me. But Kaz is a very persuasive and a very nicer person than me, so she was able to get this person to talk. Now, talked about a cluster of lights, said there was about 15 to 20 of them, and he said, I can't really remember, but until he was reminded of the actual night's events, he started to say, right, Kaz asked him, do you remember what colour they were? They were not white, and the person replied that they were green. Remember what I said about the green and red lights? There was a lot of green lights seen going that way. Some other people have spoken to me about this as well, but I've not been able to confirm their statements, but this is the first person, amongst 1 or 2 others, who've actually confirmed this sighting. They gave chase to them across actual South Wales. Now, this is the NOTAM, the Notice to Airman. Now this is the map that they let out for that night. They didn't tell people that there was a military exercise taking place that night. They just told everyone that they were there on the night. They would usually give you a few days or a few weeks notice. This is a map I put together of all the people who spoke and all the people I got in contact with, all the people who made statements about this online. This yellow line, this yellow circle here represents the area where they were supposed to have dealt with this, right? This other red circle here is just an extended area where they're allowed to take place, right? But if you look across here, look at all these people who complain about them being outside their area where they were allowed to actually proceed, or where they said they were going to be taking this exercise to. So many people. And they went out, they exceeded their boundaries that night. They shouldn't have been there, really. They weren't authorized to do so, or they didn't say that this is where they were going to be. But look how many people complained about it. And some people saw green lights, some people saw red lights, other people said they saw jets chasing things. It's a very interesting thing indeed. Other freedom of informations. Now, quite a few other people have asked about Exercise Chameleon. They wanted to know what actually happened that night. I guess they've had their own questions, their own queries. One particular person, I found this one interesting, asked about, I would like to request information regarding the Exercise Chameleon that took place in Pentyrch and Llantrys area South Wales on the 25th and 26th of February. Can you tell me if there were any aircraft flares set off during the exercise? Some of the critics of this night have said, oh, it was just flares. Whatever people saw, it was just flares. You know, military letting off flares with their aircraft. And you can see here on the bottom, a search for the information has now been completed within the Ministry of Defence, and I can confirm that no information in the scope of your request is held. So whatever this person may have seen or whatever people have said about the lights, these were not flares. Confirmation by the Joint Forces Command and Ministry of Defence themselves. Just another person. At this point, I've asked a lot of questions about the from the use of the Freedom of Information request about Exercise Chameleon. This person here, John McNaughton, just asked about dates, locations, units and names for the next Chameleon exercise. And right away, they can't even just say, oh, we'll just be conducting routine training. They put it under Section 26. Now, anyone who knows about freedom of information, Section 26 is the code that they use to say it's not in the public interest and therefore it's secret, you're not allowed to know. Just when they're asking about dates and locations of all things. And their answer down here, I always laugh at this one. The balance of the public interest was found to be in favour of withholding the information given that, overall, the public interest is best served in not releasing specific details of Exercise Chameleon, as this would provide tactical advantage to our enemies. Now, I just want to know, what kind of enemies are they talking about? I mean, if it's just a routine exercise, what possibly could Iran or Russia not find out about this from their own exercises or the secret communiques they must have between each other? Just think about that. So that's why I asked the question, is it a secret project to deal with these kinds of things? These visitors from elsewhere, these UFO craft? That's a question I asked about this. Okay. So we come in now to some of the other information that we discovered, or some of the other things that we tried. Because at this point we've done EMF, and we've done Geiger counters, we've done metal detectors, we've looked at British Geological Surveys, and we've tried just about everything we can to get more information. So, something we tried is using dowsing rods with this man, Howard Middleton Jones. Now, Howard is a very bright man. He's retired now, but he used to be an investigative archaeologist. He's an author, and he specializes in ancient origins and sacred sites. Now, he's done talks on the moon, he's done talks on NASA, and he's done talks on places like Egypt, but he also does local sites in Wales as well. And he heard about our investigations and wanted to come down. And I'm just going to show you, right, that the idea of dowsing rods is to see if you can pick up any kind of unusual energies or things that may exist there or something that was put there. Right, I'm going to play this video. I just want to play it, right, because I just want to show you what he's been doing.
Just up on Pentyrch Fields. That green stick there was when we were up here last time doing EMF readings. Howard is doing his dowsing, and he said, and what do you sense, Howard, on your rods?
Yeah, it's around this area, there's a slight pulling. They're not crossing, but they're pulling.
Strong, weak?
Quite strong, yeah, now it's starting to go.
Okay, so you're moving away from here. Mike, what happened when you was here with the EMF reader, bud?
It was going nuts.
Yeah, you just stood still in this area, and the thing was beeping and beeping and beeping.
Up to 7.9.
So it'd be interesting when Emily gets here with his Geiger counter if we can pick something up, because this is more or less the area where the craft may have come closest to the ground, maybe. So that's interesting. Good look at that.
Yeah, what are you having around here?
He's getting close to a 10 then on whatever reading he had it. Right in the area as well.
I bet this was strong a year ago. Yeah.
So where are you getting in, Howard? We're getting.
Yeah.
So Howard, what have you got?
Couple of strong readings over there, definitely pulling down and across.
So pulling down more towards up that way or that way?
Going downhill.
So going downhill.
Those are where I had my highest readings.
Now, something I discovered, or we discovered as we were walking around these fields, there's these large stones laid around boundaries of the second and third field. And many of these stones are quite big. They're about as big as this table, maybe the size of a car. And you can see that they are some kind of stone for some sort of memorial or ceremony, or they serve some kind of purpose, religiously maybe. They've got these chisel marks on them, though. And they've been carved out in specific shapes and sizes. The question is, why are they there? We wondered about this. So someone else who heard about our work, someone else who gave us a chance on this. Now, I know how some people may feel about this, but I'm going to put it in. Some people have a positive reaction and a negative reaction, but this is Mark Rayworth. And Mark's a very nice guy. And what he does is he's a medium and a psychic. And he came into these fields because what he wanted to try and do is he wanted to see if he could pick up because he's very sensitive to energy, that's how he puts it. He wanted to see if he could detect if there were any sort of vortices or energy centers or something that may be in these fields, right? Because I feel as part of the investigation, we got to look at all areas to try and understand the wider spread scope of what was going on that night. Now, again, I'm going to play another video because I want you to hear from his own words what he was doing there.
Hello, my speciality or skill is I'm very sensitive to energy, ley lines, energy crossroads, vortexes, portals. So I walk into places, I can pick up on the ley lines and energy fields, and I can also tell which way the vortexes are swirling. So this is what we're going to look at in Pentyrch today. I believe at some point this field had standing stones or energy markers, because sometimes the stones are placed on energy lines. It looks like some have been dumped over there or ripped up. So we're going to try and remap the field.
Okay.
So I'm going to try and map as much as I can and find the centre.
Okay, well let me know when you get something and we'll get you on video.
Nothing here yet, but in the other field on the way in.
That's the second field on the map.
Yeah, there's strong energy source there. So we're just going to try and, see what shape it gives us at the end. But I've walked literally 10 or 11 feet. There's 3 on a curvature here. On there, yeah? So this one is a spiral vortex, and it's travelling clockwise, as the one when we came in was shifting anti-clockwise. So I think they represent like a positive and neutral, basically. So it's interesting to see which way they go. Now it's stopped.
Mark's going all the way over that direction. So I'll see what he does from there.
So what I'm finding is up that area, there's not too much.
Right. The tree lines
The
there.
stronger circles are down here by the ball patch.
Okay.
And I think it's resonated out from somewhere. So the goal today is trying to establish the centre so that we can kind of map it, because that's why you see the bigger stones and then the smaller stones in an outer circle. So what I'm feeling coming through there is, best to describe, is that it's going like that. So I'm thinking that's some sort of energy line, ley line, but not come to a centre yet, because that'll spin me around when I come to a.
You know Garth Mountain is not too far from here, don't you?
Yeah.
That's a trig point.
Yeah.
So why have I put that in there? Why have I bothered with this particular piece of information? I'll explain. This is a map that I found on Google, and somewhere painstakingly put in all these arbor lines here. If you've ever been to Garth Mountain, you may have noticed it's got one of those concrete towers on it. You could go up to Caerphilly Mountain and find something similar. They're either known as trig points or they're known as arbor points. And they're supposed to exist on ley lines, or what people call the Earth's energy grid, yeah? Wherever the energy of the Earth flows, it goes around these areas. And they all seem to center on this particular one. Now, on the left, these are a series of cases, big cases for the UK. And you can see here, on this line we have one from Nottingham, we have one from Bearway Mountain, We have one from Denby. And you can see here, like Rendlesham Forest. Willsthorpe, that was another major military one. So was the Rendlesham Forest, and so was Berwyn. And we have down here, look, on another separate line, Pentyrch. Every single one of them was a major military intervention of what we have since discovered a UFO being identified as in the area. And the reason I put Mark in there is because I want to know, is it possible that Pentyrch Fields, like many of the others, could be some kind of energy center for these craft to come into? Do they somehow possess the knowledge we don't have from ancient times? But just maybe this is how they're able to get into this, how they're able to come here. Now, right. So this is Mark Rayworth after he had walked the fields and mapped it all out. Now, these are the large stones. This is the entrance to the third field. Up here is the ball patch, look. These smaller circles are spinning in a clockwise direction. And these larger ones, look, run into the area where this craft would have turned because it's right on that ley line. Now I'm just wondering, right, are these craft using these ley lines, or is this actually an energy signature left off by the craft itself? Because these things are spinning, the larger circles are spinning clockwise, and there are some up here that are spinning counterclockwise. It's all being drawn into that area right there. Now, those stones. This is Carnac, France, and it's a stone avenue, right? Because Mark is saying that ley line is going in a specific direction. This is more or less on a ley line right here, and these stones are going in a specific direction. Now, I've looked online for anyone to tell me why this particular site actually exists. No one actually knows. No one actually knows. And France has had some tremendous UFO sightings of its own, and some of them have been in this area. So, I mean, there's just things that correlate, and there's just things that come together, and I can't help but think, is this some sort of ancient map, or is this just some energy center that they use to actually get here? And I'm not the only one to think that, by the way. You know, I didn't come up with this idea. I just found evidence to support my idea of it. Now, NASA Worldview Images. I don't know if any of you have ever gone onto NASA's website. They have something called Worldview, or EOSDIS, ISIDIS, I think is how you pronounce it. It just shows pictures of the actual Earth every day as they get scanned, right? What the clouds look like over your area, what the world looks like on a 2D surface. Now, I got there, probable deletion and more evidence for a cover-up, because in my previous presentations, right, we've requested information and we've sometimes got it, and when we found stuff online, we found that information has suddenly been removed. And some of the websites have actually been shut down, right? And NASA is one of the biggest criminals for deleting evidence, and one good example of this was in 2001. This is the Disclosure Project with Stephen Greer. These two people here have either worked with NASA or did work with NASA. The lady on the left talked about how NASA would take satellite photos and they would spot these UFOs or strange objects on them, and then they would airbrush them out and then sell them to the public. Right? And they said also that astronauts see these things, but they're not allowed to talk about them. And this guy here said, right, that he worked in digital imagery, and when they were mapping the moon for landings for the Apollo missions, they found bases on the backside of the moon, but they never told the public about it. And any images that may contain it were deleted. I'm just trying to show you that NASA has a history of doing all this. Now, the worldview, right? The exercise was announced for Chameleon around the 17th of February 2016. And training for this sort of happened around the 19th. Towards the 22nd, those planes started circling the area. And after the 27th, you know, everything was pretty much kept under lock and key, and we've been trying to unlock them ever since. Now, this video is going to show you what I'm talking about, right? Because if there was anything strange in this area, I'm wondering if this satellite may have picked it up. But isn't that just a little unusual? Because the military cover things up, and then space agencies cover things up. It is as blatant as it comes, because those I believe that certain images were there before, but when you go back and look for them now, they're gone. Now, that's sort of like all the physical and imagery evidence that we have. I'm going to introduce to you now some of the statements from the people who were there that day, or may have been, sorry, was there the following morning to witness the other strange occurrences. Now, this is Dave, the other primary witness, the one who wants to come forward someday, but not right now. Now, I'm just going to read this out because I do need to give you the details here. He's saying here, on the 25th of February, he woke up to the same drowning noise from the plane above. That's the one that had been circling for 3 days. By dinner time, I spoke to my neighbours and we decided if it was still up tonight, we would go and do a bit of sky watching to see if we could make any sense of what was going on. That was the night that this incident was starting to take place. By 8 p.m, they still over us watched from the neighbour's rear garden. They lit a fire to keep warm as it was chilly, but we watched for hours. Nothing happened until 1:30, 1:45. That's going through to the 26th. We were just calling it a night as nothing was going to happen, and that's what we thought, and wait until another plane joined the circle. We thought this was interesting. We watched for 10 or so minutes. Then both of them circling, another turned up, joined the circle, but one was left headed off. We thought to refuel as it had been up for more than 2 hours, and the other 2 planes joined the circle. But 15 minutes after leaving, he was back, and there were now 5 planes circling the actual area. There were just 5 planes now circling this one area where there had been 2 previously, taking it in turns for 3 days. Now, this is what he goes on about what he saw. So we watched on in amazement as to what was going on. Then in the center of the circle, a red light appeared. We both reached for our phones. As I put mine to the camera, the phone just turned off. I tried to turn it back on and said the battery was dead. With that, we jumped the fence and ran over to the gate of the nearby field for better viewing. The red light turned to the 3. Then as lights became clear, this whole thing was a triangle shape. And he goes on. It very slowly came down towards the ground, over in the fields from where we were watching. The closer it got to the ground, the more smaller, very bright white lights lit up around its perimeter until it was fully lit up around the outside. It then tilted to the right, showed a curve to the bottom semicircle. Now he goes on to describe, right, how it just stopped there for a second, and then he goes on to say that there were 15 to 20 of these red orbs, and they all came from it pretty much at once. They were floating around as if they were protecting it. Now, I'll try and get through this a bit quicker. Second one from the bottom there. He says, the orbs remained. Some also went to darkness and invisible to the naked eye. One of the red orbs slowly went up into the center where the main craft came in. It stopped to turn green, flashed very fast and slowly, moved off towards southwest, bobbling along while 3 other aircraft actually followed it. The circle pulled out of formation and followed it, although it was going so fast these planes wasn't going to catch it for sure. I jumped the gate and was heading over towards where the remaining orbs could be seen when my neighbour shouted, "Where are you going?" Over there I shouted and said, "No, stay here. Don't be so silly," as I listened, as it was in a state of shock and awe of what I had just seen. Kaz was the one who told him to come back, by the way. Now, Dave has actually done some drawings over the years, and this is one of his more fresher images that he showed me. He found this one online, and he describes all the time that this thing was triangular, had this curved shape, all these red and green orbs. That's the one that was acting as a decoy, by the way. And he just says, okay, 2 of the red orbs started to come across to the right of the gate where we were standing. One of them came closer, just above us, and stopped. It turned green as if it wasn't a threat to them, and carried on towards these with the red one we watched until they also went to darkness. We then both decided to walk the path through the field to have a look, as by now you couldn't see any orbs or lights. Basically, remember I told you about the fence? Where that EMF signal we detected and the red, all the dead leaves were? That's where this thing was. And the other one was in the tree that turned green.
Okay, from this point on, I'm just going to read out the statements of the other witnesses, because during the night when we were doing the 4th anniversary presentation, the background noise in the pub was becoming too much, and basically it kind of ruined any chance of me reading this out. So I'm just going to read it here so that you all have a chance to hear me more clearly.
If at any time you can pause and read this yourself, but it basically says on the 26th of February 2016, Donna, who was a witness to all the other things except the actual craft and the lights itself, said this. I had received a message from Dave on the 24th to ask if I could hear the plane. I had turned everything off so I could hear, and then it seemed that the plane was all I could hear. Myself, Dave, and Kaz had all decided that if it was still around, the next day we would go on and skywatch. The next day, the 25th of February 2016, the plane was still moving around, so we had decided to go out that night. Myself, Kaz and Dave had all gone outside to skywatch. As soon as it got dark, I could see the big plane in the sky. It is the biggest plane that I've seen in the sky. It seemed to be going around, and above the garden the plane was going out wide and coming back in a bit like a number 8. It was doing that a few times, and then it would do a circle and keep repeating the same pattern. This had gone on all night. We had been out there for a good few hours as the night had gotten colder, and to be honest, I'd gotten a little bored watching the plane and decided to go into Kaz's house and make some hot chocolates. Donna continues, I had the cups and measured the milk and put them in the pan to boil. As I was waiting for the milk, I had used the bathroom. As I was in the bathroom, I thought I'd heard Kaz call my name, but was in the bathroom. I knew that Kaz and Dave had seen something, but didn't rush out. I had gone into the kitchen, poured the drinks, and picked up 2 cups and started to walk out to the garden where I had left Dave and Kaz, only to find that they weren't there. I did call out, but had no answer, so I went back into the house to wait for them. I came back into the house with the drinks and put them down and went into the front room. I heard something coming fast. I first thought it was helicopters, but I ran to the front room window to see 2 planes coming towards the house, heading into the direction of the fields. I did go to the kitchen window, but by the time I got there, 7 big footsteps. The planes were out of my sight. There was lots of air activity. I just couldn't see it from where I was, but I could hear it. After a while, Dave and Kaz came back into the house and looked like they had seen a ghost. But they were also very excited, like their adrenaline was running high, and had asked me, did you see what happened? I said I didn't see anything, but did hear the planes and choppers going over the fields. After they had told me what had happened, I couldn't believe that I had missed it. Whilst they had continued explaining what had happened over the fields, and myself asking questions about it, I had said to them both that we will see what the army has to say as the air noise. They will have to come up with a cover story, as it would have woken a lot of people. After about 5 minutes of talking, it was getting late for me, so I decided to go to bed. Dave and Kaz were still running high with adrenaline and were talking about the event, so I had left them to it. Sometime after me getting into bed, can't say a time, I had heard a big bang from outside. I can't say if I had been woken by the bang or if I was just falling asleep, but it sounded like a bomb had gone off. Donna now talks about the following morning preceding the events. With all of us talking and Steve seeing how excited both Kaz and Dave were, Steve had said, let's go and see if we can find anything out there, implying to go over the fields. Now Steve is also a friend of Kaz, Dave and Donna. He had arrived in the house that morning and was soon finding out about all this. Now, all 4 of us had gone over to the field behind the houses for a walk to see if there was anything. There we could see we had gone into that field that the UFO had come close to the floor to search it. When walking into the fields, it was snowing. But this snow was different. You could hear it hitting and see it rolling off your coat. Among us, we started to look at the snow, but it wasn't snow. It was the size of rice, but in a bowl shape. But it felt like a marshmallow. You could squeeze it, and it would near enough go back to its original shape. When you had hold of the snow, it didn't melt, it just went away. As Dave, Kaz, and Steve stayed by the burnt-looking bushes in the middle of the UFO field, I had headed towards the side of the field to have a walk around. As I came to the field, the right side of my face became warm, which I thought was strange, as I don't feel the right side of my body. Following on, I had a weird feeling that something was with me or watching me. I scanned the area but couldn't see anyone or anything around the field. The feeling got so strong that I had called Dave away from the group so that I wasn't on my own and started to walk towards him. I told the others that I felt someone or something, but again we didn't see anything. We continued our conversation as we all started to walk back home. Kaz and Steve had been saying that they were going to Lantriston to see if they could find anything else. After having a drink, Kaz and Steve went out and Dave and I had gone home. Steve and Kaz had come back and told me what they had found, and that they had spoken to people in Lantriston. They had been over to the Common and they had pointed Kaz and Steve towards Smilog Woods. This is Steve, a witness to some of the other events except the main event of what happened during that day and night. He says, I went over to Kaz's house in the morning about 10 a.m. Before I could sit down, Kaz told me what had happened in the early hours of the morning. She was talking real fast. I told her to calm down and I would put the kettle on. She started telling me again what she and Dave had seen the night before. I was gutted I missed it and realized that I had heard the planes but didn't think anything of it at the time. I have known Kaz for over 20 years and she has never lied to me. So I do not doubt that what she told me is true. During this time, Dave and Donna had also come for a cuppa. Dave was really excited and was saying something about a military exercise cover story. Donna said she was gutted, but she didn't hear Kaz calling her name when the UFO first arrived because she was making hot drinks. Steve had joined the group over the fields where we had discovered all those EMF readings a year and a half later, of course. But he says here, the following morning when they all went over there, we wanted to see burns on the ground, but there weren't any. But it was snowing. Just there, only in that field. The surrounding areas didn't have it. We walked all around the other fields, but there wasn't any snow in those. The snow was weird, like polystyrene balls, but smaller, and it just rolled off your clothes and didn't settle. Donna said it was spongy like snow, like marshmallow. The whole thing was very strange indeed, and not normal. We walked back to Kaz's house, and I, with plans made for the next day, I went home. The plan was to meet at Kaz's house at 9 a.m. We were all there ready. Everyone got into my car, and I drove up to Smilog Wood. So now the group have gone to Smilog Wood. Steve is with them, and this is what he had to say. We walked up the road to the point where we had come out the day before. This is where the hike started because we had walked on uneven ground and fight our way up the steep bike trails to maintain walking in a straight line. When we emerged at the top, we came out of the corner of another road, and straight in front of us were tree trunks snapped 20 feet up from the ground. We had just found what we were looking for. Donna started to film the location. The rest of us continued to walk up the road in shock really of what we were looking at. Trees had been snapped in half and everything was dead. It looked exactly like something that hit it with some force. There were some scuff marks on the surrounding trees, with some of their bark missing and what looked like a burn mark on the others. One of the trees that had been snapped at its midway point was between 30 and 40 feet long. This tree was perfectly healthy and lay flat on the ground with its canopy branches overlapping the road. I have never seen anything like it before. We filmed and photographed the site and continued to search the rest of the woods looking for any more damage or debris, but we found nothing. And if you've seen our previous presentations, you will know that these trees have been covered in some detail. But these are just some of the pictures. Look, you can see snapped at the midway point, trees laying on the ground, very healthy, and there at the far right photo is Steve himself standing at the trees. You can see how tall these things are, how tall some of them are, how big some of them are. At the bottom right of that far right photograph, you can see the canopies and branches which were snapped. Yeah, I mean, something had gone into this area and had hit it with some force, because these trees do not break easily. You would need to hit it with some tremendous speed or something very heavy to snap them in this way.
And see if you get the length of the tree in as well, because they don't snap like that. Oh, the tree goes all the way down there.
So here we have something 48 hours after the events. They've gone back into the Pentyrch fields again, and Steve goes on to say that the following day, Sunday, I went to Kaz's house in the morning. We were all discussing what we had found out so far and decided to go back over to the field and see if we had missed anything. It was still snowing and felt eerie, like you were being watched. Kaz's compass was being affected by something there, and the needles swung towards the field. We didn't stay for long because it didn't feel right, and we felt the same thing Donna said. She felt a warm patch in the middle of the snow just as we were leaving to go back to Kaz's house. And what you are about to see here momentarily is a video of Smilog Wood with the actual snow in the day or two just after the event. You can see for yourselves what they actually witnessed with their own eyes and what they put into these statements. You will see the burn marks, and you will see the broken trees, and you will see the weird snow and everything else. And there you see the burn marks, the pinkish marks and silvery marks on these trees, the right side of the trunk there. That is evidence of some kind of maybe radiation or microwave kind of energy burn. You can see the huge pellets of snow hitting the camera kind of like rice, but squeezy like marshmallow or polystyrene balls. These are the only two locations in Manchester and Pentyrch which had the snow. Nowhere else had it, only the two areas where UFO activity had happened. There you see one of the broken branches, freshly broken from the night of the 26th of February 2016 after the explosions had happened. Some more clear close-ups of the actual pinkish burn marks again. They do not appear to be anywhere in the forest, or the Smilog Woods I should say. Some scuff marks on that tree there also. Some broken branches. You can see another broken trunk. There you see, look, some more broken trees. 6 or 7 in total actually, but all snapped roughly at the midway point. As you can see, Kaz also notices the burning trunks. And there's some of those canopies on the floor. Again, another close-up of it. I mean, and you can see there, very wide shot. Clearly something has damaged all this. A fresh scuff mark on the tree there also. Yeah, so very interesting indeed. You can see clearly that something unusual has happened there, and that was only roughly 48 hours after the event. I'm just going to introduce Kaz, because I want you to show that with the FOIs and asking the questions of the military, South Wales Police, the Cumtown Health Board and the Ministry of Defence, they all seem to get their stories mixed up. They never give us any straight answers. I'm just going to let Kaz walk in here and explain it to you. So Kaz, come on in.
Thanks, Gary. It's taken us 4 years, but we did catch that on a few. And like any barrister in a court of law, you pick up on the subtleties. No witness is going to tell you they're lying. But clearly, a good barrister will catch you out if you are, and will either win a prosecution or a good defence. Well, in this case, there were a couple of Freedom of Information requests we put into the Health Board, and the first one was sent on the 18th of January 2018, and they said that no emergency measures and services or procedures were undertaken, as no information was passed to the Royal Glamorgan Hospital about this exercise. But don't you find that a little bit dangerous if somebody's having neurosurgery? There's a huge explosion outside the hospital, and they haven't been told. A few months later, in November of the same year, they retracted it and said, actually, please accept our apologies for our previous response, and now new information has come to light. Really, it's taken them 11 months to find that out. A government-funded health board. Okay. I'll let that one slide. So now we have the Ministry of Defence. We asked them, why were the soldiers carrying automatic weapons that did not have a yellow cap at the end of their barrel, implying they were carrying live rounds? After they told us they didn't know who they were. The information is withheld under Section 26. Well, only the military can hide behind Section 26. When we asked them again, why did they choose the land? Pentyrch and not Sennybridge, which is just about 30 miles up the road. And we were told that whilst MOD training areas are most often used for the training, do not always contain the features required for certain activities. Yeah, in this case, a big UFO. And that was on the 16th of May 2016. Thanks to Richard D. Hall for that one. We asked the same question. Why did they use the fields of Pentyrch when Sennybridge is just up the road? On the 27th of January of this year. And their response was, this information is withheld under Section 26. Not in your interest. So what is it? Special features or Section 26? But this is the one. When we asked them previously about the men in the fields, it said Section 26. Not in your interest. Even though they said they didn't know who they were. So we asked them again, why did you send a clean-up crew after the event? What were they searching for? And why were they carrying guns? Only this time we get no information is held in the scope of your request. That, ladies and gents, is a lie. It's either Section 26, not in your interest, or it's a blatant lie that they don't have any information. Yes, they do have information, but it's not in our interest to know. When I got armed men behind my house who said they were Vodafone. No, why can't they be honest with us? They won't be honest. We caught them out on a lie. And in a court of law, if you catch a witness out on a lie, you disregard all of their testimony. My testimony is the only one that stood the test of time. It's never changed, and it never will. Because there's only one way I can tell it, and that's how it happened. The Ministry of Defence and the RAF are lying to us. Everything we've asked has been Section 26. Why did they do a metal search on the common? Section 26. Why were they carrying live rounds behind my house? Section 26. Or if you ask them later, but in a different way, suddenly they forget they have the information. It's a lie. And it's very clever to catch the MOD out on a lie, but that's blatantly what it is.